This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Darryl Parks on Demand.
Well, all week I've been reading and watching TV, watching about Jerry Sandusky. He got the first week of the trial over with. Trial didn't take place yesterday. Defense starts this coming week. And I must say, I'm sick and tired of hearing about the apologists, or I should say hearing from the apologists on Penn State. And more specifically, Joe Paterno. On TV show after TV show, expert after expert, lawyer after lawyer, reporter after reporter, they seem to apologize for Penn State and also apologize for Joe Paterno. They also will not broadcast or provide the testimony of the victims. This morning I'm going to read from the grand jury report and some of the things that, some of the items, the testimony that was in the courtroom this past week. I can't put this any simpler. Joe Paterno was not a good man. You have these experts getting on TV and they apologize for the guy. Oh, he was a great man. And this is the one that got me. Joe Paterno was a good Catholic. No, he wasn't. He wasn't a good Catholic. When premeditated child rape is taking place and you know about it, you are not a good Catholic. Is that clear enough? When you have the choice to do what is right and you choose not to do what is right, you are not a good Catholic. In fact, you're not even a good human being. Because religion has very little to do with choosing to do the right thing. In the case of Mike McQuarrie, who at the time was a graduate assistant, the 28-year-old who walked in on a child rape, he chose to slam a locker. He chose to leave. He chose to call his dad. This is a former football player. I don't care how big Jerry Sandusky was as he was raping a child. A good person, their first reaction would be to intervene, grab the guy, and beat the hell out of him. That is what a good person does. A coward slams a locker, puts his sneakers away, and leaves and calls dad. That's what a coward does. These people aren't good people. When they should have done the most, they did the least. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on at this institution. They chose to protect the institution. They chose to protect the money coming into the institution. They chose not to protect children. That's what's going on here. That's what's on trial. There's an animal on trial. You know, we saw this a number of years ago in the Catholic Church. And I'll say the same thing about the priests. I will say the same thing about the bishops, the archbishops, all the way up to the Pope. They all knew. They are not good Catholics. They are not good human beings. It is pretty clear. It has little to do with religion. It has little to do with education. And the irony of this whole thing, a priest is a highly educated individual. When you're a part of college football and you're part of a university setting, you're a highly educated individual. You're pretty smart. You've gone through the university system. You may have a PhD. You may have doctorates in theology. Education has nothing to do with it. It has to do with your core makeup. It's not hard to figure out when you see a child being raped or you hear about a child being raped to do the right thing. And an example after example after example, these people chose not to do the right thing. I mean, that's what it's down. That's what it comes down to. A choice between a child, an innocent child, a needy child, or protecting the institution at all costs. Let me read to you from the grand jury report, the grand jury indictment of Jerry Sandusky. There are pages after pages of this. The first one is 23 pages. There was also a second grand jury report that came out that's much shorter, but this is from the second one. Victim number 9 testified that during his overnight visits with Sandusky, he always stayed in the basement, located in the basement, or in the bedroom located in the basement of the Sandusky home. He stated that there were a number of bedrooms located elsewhere in the home and that at least 2 of these were not occupied. Victim 9 was always, without exception, told to sleep in the basement bedroom. Victim number 9 testified that Sandusky specifically told him to stay in the basement unless otherwise directed by Sandusky. Now, I'm going to jump in here. Does that sound like kidnapping? He ate meals in the basement, and the food would be brought to him by Sandusky. He further testified that despite being in the Sandusky home on these numerous occasions, he had barely any contact with Sandusky's wife during his visits. He specifically testified that she never came into the basement when he was there. Many of these assaults occurred in the basement bedroom of Sandusky's residence. The victim testified that Sandusky forced him to perform oral sex on numerous occasions. Sandusky also attempted to engage in anal penetration of victim 9 on at least 16 occasions, and at times did penetrate him. The victim testified that on at least one occasion he screamed for help, knowing that Sandusky's wife was upstairs, but no one came to help him. Victim 9 also testified that Sandusky would take him to a hotel in the State College, Pennsylvania area. At this hotel, Sandusky would utilize the swimming pool, jacuzzi, and workout equipment. Victim 9 testified that on one of these visits, when he and Sandusky were in the pool, Sandusky exposed his erect penis to the victim. He stated that at other times Sandusky had touched his erect penis and performed oral sex on him during some of these visits to the hotel. Sandusky frequently told him he loved and cared for him. He also told the victim to keep these things secret. And then on to Mike McQuarrie. As the graduate assistant entered the locker room doors, he was surprised to find the lights in the showers on. He then heard rhythmic slapping sounds. He believed those sounds to be those of sexual activity. As the graduate assistant put his sneakers in his locker, he looked into the shower. He saw a naked boy, victim 2, whose age he estimated to be 10 years old, with his hands up against the wall, being subjected to anal intercourse by a naked Sandusky. The graduate assistant was shocked, but noticed that both victim 2 and Sandusky saw him. The graduate assistant left immediately distraught. Put yourself into the mind of that 10-year-old boy being raped by an older adult male. Put yourself into the mind of victim number 9 as he screamed out. In both cases, they were hoping someone, an adult, would choose to do the right thing. And no one did. That is what is on trial at Penn State. I'm Darryl Parks at 17 after 9, 700 WLW. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast from meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer for today. Partly sunny and hot, hot, hot. Also humid. Maybe a pop-up thunderstorm possible with a high of 90. For tonight, the low down to 66. Tomorrow on Father's Day, partly sunny, warm, humid again. Maybe a thunderstorm at any time with a high of about 90 again. And then during the week, temperatures into the mid-90s. How about that? Can't beat that kind of weather. 72 at 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. Yep, when people have a choice to do the right thing, we live in a world today no one wants to take responsibility. Later on today, I'll get into the 20-year-old who killed a guy on a motorcycle, and the excuse is she's 20 years old. Oh, okay. Hey, we give you a driver's license at 16. You buy insurance. In this case, she had a job at a Burger King. Killed a guy, but she's 20 years old. There's no responsibility, no reason to do the right thing, no reason to stay at the scene of the accident. She's ADD. She had to leave. Got bored. There's a guy laying there dead on the road, but hey, it's okay. 20 years old. And the killer mailman. And by the way, this coward too, the killer mailman in northern Kentucky. I offered him a shot to come on this program because I know who he is. And the coward was too busy. So we'll get into the coward mailman who likes to drive over 3-year-old golden retrievers and drive off as the golden retriever walks back to its house, walks in the door, kisses its owner, and drops dead. There's no reason for any responsibility in the world today. Rich writes to D. Parks at 700WLW.com. He says, what you're saying is right on, is why I listen every Saturday. There aren't enough people with conviction anymore. Thank you. Well, thank you for listening, Rich. Because we live in this world where people generationally are raised as veal. You know, I kind of say that as a joke. I've done that as tongue-in-cheek topics. But there are results for people being raised as veal, and generations being raised as people that take no responsibility for their actions. Hey, kill a guy? Doesn't matter. Kill a dog? Doesn't matter. Child rape? Hey, not my responsibility to stop the 60-year-old guy from raping a 10-year-old. Yeah, Mike McQuarrie should have kicked his ass. Bloodied him up. This was not a guy that weighed 130 pounds. This is a former Penn State football player who's a coward. And now, you know, it's interesting reading about this trial and also seeing some of the attorneys on some of the cable news channels. Alan Dershowitz, I've seen him a couple of times this past week. Pretty smart lawyer, teaches at Harvard. This guy's serious. This guy's a serious attorney when it comes to attorneys, right? And he's like, I have no idea how I would defend this. And how did he put it? He said this trial is triangulated. He says you have eyewitnesses, you have numerous victims, and then the numerous victims are all saying the same thing. They're all testifying to the same type of behavior of this animal, Sandusky. So the excuse is going to be this coming week in the defense that Jerry Sandusky has histrionic personality disorder. Yeah, I never heard of that either. Histrionic personality disorder. It's a class of condition which is categorized in dramatic personality disorders. Unstable emotions, distorted self-images. People that suffer this, let's see here. Self-esteem doesn't come from true feelings of self-worth, but rather from approval from other people. And those suffering from this disorder will often engage in dramatic or inappropriate behavior to call attention to themselves. And inflicting sexual abuse is not commonly recognized as a trait of this condition, but sexually provocative behavior is. Standard treatment for this disorder is a type of counseling called psychotherapy, in which a mental health professional helps the person delve into what's causing their thoughts and behaviors. Yeah, at some time in life, in times, you know, there are times we have trouble understanding why things happen. When you have mass murders, you know, you have a pissed off kid that goes into a high school with a gun and just wipes out 6, 7, 8, 10, a dozen of his classmates, and so often. Yeah, right away, the psychologists and the psychiatrists, they start talking. Well, we have to understand what's going through so-and-so's mind. No, we don't. Nope. We don't have to understand. Because at times in life, there are people that are just simply evil. They're just the devil. They're bad people. They can't operate within our society. They can't operate in our world, in our communities. An individual like Jerry Sandusky, the opportunity was there numerous times. Accusations started in 1994. And the accusations at that time, children, 6, 7 years old. They knew. And what did they do to punish him? They took away his keys. That's what they did. Here is an individual. You know how I know they knew? And not only Penn State, the entire industry of college football. This guy supposedly resigned. This guy was at the height of his career. This guy was looked upon as the best defensive coordinator in college football. The best. He resigned. And after he resigned, not one school offered him a job. Not one. Because no school was going to take a risk on Jerry Sandusky. That is how we know. 29 after 9, 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, and pound 700 on AT&T. Should a line become available, time for news on the big 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. Anthony Reed, you've heard him on with me. He's the guy that lost about 400 pounds or so out of Anderson Township. He's doing a walk today and inviting you and a friend to a walk to fight obesity. It's happening at Lunken Airport, the Playfield Trail over by the Farmers Market. And that is going on today at 10 o'clock. And as Anthony says, the first steps are all it takes. And those are the hardest ones if you're looking to lose some weight. Somebody to really look up to if you have problems with obesity, because this guy is, 400 pounds? That's like dropping 2 people. 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, pound 700 on AT&T. The numbers here into the bunker. As a histrionic personality disorder is what's going to be the defense of this animal, Jerry Sandusky. on trial. What is it, like 50-some counts? They're going to put this guy away for the rest of his life when he's convicted. And I say when he's convicted because when you have people like Alan Dershowitz, the attorney, on TV saying, I have no idea how you defend this one. This one is, And then the histrionic personality disorder. They're going to try to go for the sympathy vote on the jury. How does that excuse child rape? Even if this guy has this, and this is legit, histrionic personality disorder. How does that excuse the rape of a child? Not following that one. And I'm thinking life is not going to be too kind for Jerry Sandusky once he goes into the big house in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You have that so-called inmate code, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm wondering if they're going to isolate this guy. I don't think they should. I think they should put him in the general population so he can take showers with Bubba. And let's go to Biker Bob, who is in Norwood. Biker Bob, you're on the big one.
Darryl, how are you?
Doing well.
Hey, this is just, honestly, it's just tough just to hear this stuff. And what bothers me is, the mental health professionals will come up with these terms and disorders. At what point does it just become just flat evil?
He's evil. He's evil.
Can we just not sugarcoat this with some, he can't help it, he's afflicted with fill in the blank? BS. The guy's just evil. Can we stop sugarcoating it?
We try to come up with excuses so we can justify it in our minds. When people do horrible things, such as what Jerry Sandusky is accused of. And Bob, I hate to say this, but if you do it the first time, a decent human being would say that was wrong, and I'm not going to ever do that again. A decent human being. But this guy is a serial child rapist, and he continued to do it over and over and over again.
Right.
The people that were surrounded by, that he surrounded himself with, whether it was with his charitable organization, whether it was Penn State, college football,
his wife?
And his wife, they all
when is
knew.
She going to be called on the carpet? That crap's happening in her own house, and how many times did she just turn a blind eye to it?
When I read this grand jury testimony where this kid, victim number 9, said he screamed for help, knowing that Sandusky's wife was upstairs, and no one, the way it's written here, but no one ever came to help him.
Well, she'll probably do something like, well, I know what's going to happen, so I'm just going to remove myself from the situation so I can't pretend to hear any of the screams or anything going on. I'll just say, plausible deniability. I didn't hear anything. Why? Because I chose to take myself out of that situation so I could not act on anything.
Bob, how about look, I'm gonna have a sleepover at Jerry Sandusky's house, and as this victim number 9 testified to the grand jury that he was directed to stay in the basement unless otherwise directed by Sandusky. So he was not going to have any any interaction with his wife. He was being kidnapped.
Of course. Yeah, there is no other way to describe that. It is kidnapping. That's all it is.
Well, look, I'm tired of hearing about the excuses for a Jerry Sandusky and hearing about how Joe Paterno was a good Catholic. He was not a good Catholic. I'm sorry. He was not a good Catholic. He had a chance to do what was right. He didn't do what was right. This has nothing to do with religion. It has to do about being a decent human being.
Right.
And to be a member of society and to be a member of our communities, you have to be a decent human being. It's not hard to choose right and wrong when it comes to the rape of a child.
Yeah. I mean, the harsh reality is, you have to ask the question, though, of all these victims, the tough question needs to be asked: how many of them are going to grow up to do the same thing because that's what they've learned?
Well, the amount I saw Michael Reagan. He was on Piers Morgan this past week, and Michael Reagan was abused as a child by another man. Michael Reagan was adopted by Ronald Reagan, and this happened in the 1950s. This interview that Piers Morgan did was chilling, Bob, because the individual that abused him as a child took pictures of him as a child. And this abuser passed away only 7 years ago. And when this animal died, this man's sister called Michael Reagan and told him he can now rest because those pictures were destroyed. All these years. And Michael Reagan has to be in his, mid-60s?
Sure.
Easy. Early to mid-60s. All these years, that animal kept those pictures. And when he finally died, his sister destroyed the pictures. That is shocking. Absolutely shocking. And Mike, it was a peek into a picture into Michael Reagan's soul, because this man still was affected by this decades later, and this abuse happened in the early 1950s, and he started crying. That is what is on trial here at Penn State. There's a focal point with Jerry Sandusky, but this is stuff. These are issues that we need to talk about, truly need to talk about, and not avoid. 18 in front of 10 on the big one, 700 WLW. Time for the Frisch's big boy, big play of the game from last night. Reds playing the Mets in Flushing. Caller number 7, 513-749-3700. Good luck from the home of the Cincinnati Reds. 700 WLW congratulates Ron Dove of Lima, today's Frisch's big boy, big play of the day winner.
Swings and slices one down the left field side, headed toward the corner, on the run, diving for the ball is Bay. He can't get it. That ball is in play, and Bay looks to be banged up. Gets up slowly, running down that ball. Bruce around third. He's on his way home. Here's the throw. He's in there with a slide, and an inside the park home run for Jay Bruce.
Jim Kelsch last night on 700 WLW. And Ron, you're the winner of a Frisch's gift pack. Couple of tickets to a future Reds game. Also qualified for the grand prize trip to Goodyear, Arizona in spring training 2013. From the home of the Cincinnati Reds, 700 WLW. Final score last night, 7-3. And the Reds and Mets do battle at Citi Field in Flushing, New York. Coming up tonight, first pitch at 7:15. It's Homer Bailey pitching for the Reds, and inside pitch starting a little after 6 o'clock tonight here on the home of the Reds, 700 WLW, NBA Finals. It's Game 3. Of course, everyone in Ohio knows they need to root for Oklahoma City because of the evil LeBron James, and that series is tied at 1 game apiece. No, I'm sorry, that comes up tomorrow. All right, 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and you can see the game on, and root against LeBron, you can see the game on Channel 9. 13, also on ESPN 1530. We have the game too. 13 in front of 10. I'm Darryl Parks, 513-749-7000, 1-800-THE-BIG-1, pound 700 on AT&T. We live in a world no one is responsible for their actions anymore. We'll get into the 20-year-old. That's the excuse. She's 20 for killing the guy on the motorcycle in Cincinnati this past week, and also the coward mailman that killed the golden retriever, the coward that won't come on the big one and explain his actions as he drove over the dog 3 times. And the dog limping back to its house, walking in the front door and dropping dead. Josh writes to D. Parks at 700WLW.com. He says, for Sandusky, now they claim he has a personality disorder. Guilty. I am sick of the Michael Jackson defense for this dirtbag that he loved children. For Joe Paterno, he is warming of that special place in hell for his future roommates, like Pilarchik and all the other people, whether in college football or the Catholic Church. Wow, this guy's harder on the Catholic Church than I am. Let's see here. As for the postman running over the dog, he is lucky it wasn't my dog, or I would have gone postal on him. Excuse the pun. He was in a truck with a golden retriever, open door. He's a dirtbag. When the post office goes belly up, at least this guy will finally get canned. That's going to be part of my my opinion on that. We'll do that at 10:06 this morning here on 700 WLW. Pam is in North College Hill. Pam, you're on the big one.
Good morning, Darryl. How are you?
You know, Pam, I can't complain. How are you, more importantly?
A little bit on the warm side. I'm sitting in my car with no AC, but that's okay. I was munching on McDonald's. But more to the point, regarding the Jerry Sandusky case, I cannot even begin to describe what a vile, disgusting person that this man is, and that goes for all pedophiles. With regard to the histrionic defense, that has nothing whatsoever to do with being a pedophile. And in my book, a pedophile.
Send me an email to dparks700WLW.com. He says, had you ever heard in regards to Jerry Sandusky disorder before?
And
him having a mental disorder? No belief. All right.
So
do you know anything about it? Short and to the point. 10:06. Lack of responsibility for people behind the wheel of a car.
Really,
in this case, a 20-year-old. Her excuse for killing a guy on a motorcycle in Cincinnati this week. Well, her attorney's excuse.
I don't know where they brought this from, but basically it's someone who...
Okay.
The histrionic,
and then, of course, we have the coward dog killer mailman
many different things.
who refuses to come on the big one and explain his actions. Well, we'll get to that at 10:06. Here on the home of the Reds, 700 WLW. Sexual abuse is not commonly associated with this condition.
It's not.
Sexually provocative behavior is.
Well, that would then relate to my knowledge of it as being more of an excitability factor that comes in that the person cannot control. However, I go right back to a pedophile is a pedophile is a pedophile.
Right.
And so for me, this is what the solution is. This is only my opinion. If anybody molests a child one time in any way, shape, or form, they immediately go to jail for life. The recidivism rate has been proven to be very high, even with and after treatment of pedophilia. That's been widely known and widely broadcast for years. The other part of the solution is that all of us need to be constantly, in my opinion, praying for the children who have been harmed by pedophilia. It is not something they will ever totally get over. It's impossible. And I can tell you from personal experience that I have a friend who, as a young girl, was molested by her father. And in defense, believe it or not, of Mrs. Sandusky, that her mother never knew. These people are very sneaky, they're very disgusting, and they will find a way to go unknown.
But Pam, to the testimony, the grand jury testimony, and also the testimony in the court yesterday, the one victim, victim number 9, screaming out. I mean, this. I've seen pictures of Sandusky's home. This is not a huge mansion. Okay, this was not a soundproofed room. You know, at some point, I know we want to believe our loved ones, and we want to believe they're up to no good. But evidence. You know, when somebody is brought over. The wife is not allowed into the basement. The child is not allowed to come up unless directed by in this case Jerry Sandusky. You know, the clue phone ought to go off.
I really appreciate you setting me straight on that. To be honest with you, I haven't watched anything for the past 2 days on it because I've been enjoying spending time with my grandchildren. So I missed that part of it, or maybe it was at some other time, but you're absolutely right. In that case, there's no excuse for her not to have reported it.
All right. Well, Pam, have a wonderful weekend.
You do, and please pray for all these children.
Yes.
Thank you. You have a good one, too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. By the way, if you want to read the grand jury testimony, this really hasn't been, everything's available on the Internet. Let's call it what it is. But it really hasn't been, publicized in some of the media and some of the media websites as far as the grand jury documents. I have those on my webpage at 700WLW.com. Search the word Darryl. And you can read both grand jury reports that were presented. Also, the, what do they call that, as far as the indictment. That's also up on my blog at 700WLW.com. It's 6 minutes now in front of 10. I'm Darryl Parks on the big one, 700 WL.